Wake up! It's time to jump on your snowmobile and get to the office where you have to stare down a hole a mile deep into the South Pole ice. Hello and welcome back to Tiny Ice. My name is Jocelyn and this is where I share bits from my trip to Antarctica in 2 minutes or less. I went to the South Pole as a PolarTREC educator. You can learn more about them below. While I was there, I worked closely with a group of scientists working on a project called SpiceCore. It was my first time doing any sort of field research as opposed to being in a laboratory with 4 walls, and I loved it. It's like going on an adventure for the sake of science, and does it get any better than that? So today we're going to talk about what the field camp was like and what SpiceCore was studying. Ready? Let's go. SpiceCore stands for South Pole Ice Core, and it's a project that actually started a few years ago, where scientists extracted ice core samples from about a mile deep and then filled the remaining borehole with antifreeze. Last year, this hole was used by IceCube to study different properties of the ice below the surface. The basic idea goes like this. A specialized device known as a logger gets deployed to a specific depth. That logger then collects data, is brought back to the surface, and replaced with a different logger that measures something different. There were several types of loggers, some of which included luminescence, ultraviolet, radiopulsar, and dust. And even though they were all measuring different properties of the ice, they functioned in a similar manner. For example, the UV and luminescence loggers were deployed into the ice, emitted a light, and then measured and recorded how much light was reflected, how fast, and from what direction. This can ultimately tell us how light scatters within the South Pole ice. But why do we care? SpiceCore is a sub-project of IceCube. In my last video, we talked about how the IceCube Neutrino Observatory has detectors that are buried in the ice that can help us study the cosmos. So the more we know about how light travels within the South Pole ice, the better we can understand the data collected by IceCube's detectors. All of this work took place on a small field camp about 2 miles from the main station, or about a 7-minute snowmobile ride. It was the most isolated I've ever felt. On one side, there was a tiny station, and on the other side, a great white expanse. It was awesome. At the field camp, we had an outhouse, a generator, the SpiceCore hole with a winch, and the Crystal Palace. The Crystal Palace was a small warming hut. On sunny days, it could get so warm in there we would break a sweat. But on overcast days, we'd have to keep every single piece of gear on. You can check out a full tour of the camp at the link below. One of my main jobs was to stand at the winch and make sure that the cable that was deploying the loggers was wrapping correctly. Now this may sound small, but this cable was about a mile long. So a small shift could cause a huge change and we'd lose a lot of time before we could deploy the next logger. The winch actually arrived at the South Pole way behind schedule. So in order to get everything finished, we had to cram in the data collection into 2 weeks, which meant we traded off shifts so that there would be someone at the Crystal Palace basically 24 hours a day. We had a lot of downtime because it would take hours to deploy the logger to the specific depth, which meant that we all made the Crystal Palace feel a little bit more like home, with lots of cookies and origami decorations. I miss it. Thanks for stopping by for some Tiny Ice. Stay tuned for more bits from my trip to Antarctica. See you later!